This is Fraud to Fearless,
where we inspire dreamers to overcome imposter syndrome, embrace their authentic selves, and learn how to harness your brand to build a path to success.
I'm Brooke.
And I'm Hayden, and we're your hosts.
Welcome to the show.
Episode 1. Here we go. The journey begins. You know, it was always a dream for both of us, I think, to start a podcast. So we thought, what better way to start off our official episode 1 than to introduce ourselves, tell you who you're going to be listening to on this podcast, and then also, why are we doing this? That's really kind of our guiding principle for doing this first episode. So you can learn a little bit more about us and what we're going to be talking about, but also know the intentions of why we want to do this in the first place. So, Brooke, why don't you give us an intro and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay, a little background about me. My undergrad is in communication. When people usually hear that, they're like, oh, yes, like public relations and journalism. And I'm like, no, actually, it's literally communication, like public speaking and conflict resolution. I just love talking with people. So this is a dream come true. I didn't know what I was going to do with that, but I've always loved learning and have always wanted to get an education, a higher degree. So I ended up getting an MBA with an emphasis in data analytics and a master's in human resources. That's where Hayden and I met in grad school. And it's been so fun to see how our paths have differed and also intertwined. So work-wise, I started out in corporate America, working in HR, and later transitioned into a role called a Decision Science Analyst. And this was where I helped executives and leaders reach their goals using data-driven insights. Secretly, my dream was always to be an executive coach. So it kind of transformed a little bit here, where I learned so much in that role. Now we're kind of doing something different because I am a mom of 2, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they are amazing. I had no idea how much light they would bring into my life. And I remember having this thing in my mind of, can I be a working professional? Can I use my gifts and still show up as a mom? So I call myself now a mompreneur, and it's been a journey. Spare time, I play guitar. I'm an ex-collegiate athlete, and I love spending time with people and deep conversations. So happy to be here.
Wow, it's almost impossible to follow that, but I guess I'll try. I went to Utah State, like Brooke, where we met, go Aggies, big game against Hawaii today. I studied accounting. I really had no idea what I wanted to do, like probably most of us. There's no built-in part of society that teaches folks, hey, this is what I'm good at. This is what I want to do when I grow up. No one teaches you this. So, but then they make you pick your freshman year, right? So you don't really get any time. I picked accounting because I was always good at math and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I just picked the most versatile thing, and that ended up being accounting. I knew I picked the right major when I would introduce myself to new college students on campus, and I'd say, hey, that's my name. What's your name? What are you studying? Oh, I'm studying accounting. Almost always their response was, I'm sorry, which was awesome that I picked something that scared. It's probably the most feared, major on a college campus, which is cool. But yeah, I was going to go the Big 4 route, ended up pivoting and found HR, or it found me. I'm not really sure, but ended up doing the dual master program, which is where Brooke and I met at Utah State after my undergrad in accounting. Did a dual master's, the Master of Human Resources, and then an MBA. And then I ended up getting a job interning with a Fortune 100 company, really great company. It's really known for, really great HR practices and HR really helping drive the business. And so I went and did a leadership development program, a rotational program where I moved to different locations, did different jobs, and really built a portfolio of experience. I've been with Honeywell now over 6 years, and I have learned a ton. I've done a whole bunch of different jobs, all, supporting people all over the world in different businesses and supporting different functions and different COEs. So I know what a valuable HR partner can be. I know how, you can add value to a business, even a business that's 100,000 people. I've got a lot of experience kind of navigating and cutting through red tape and getting stuff done, which is really exciting. On the personal side, I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Queen City. If you've never been, put it on your list. It is absolutely gorgeous. I love it here. I'm married, been married actually 5 years tomorrow. So it's the 5-year anniversary tomorrow. We've got 2 puppies from St. Lucia. They're our little potcakes. That's the official breed name they call the street pups down there. So they're a prince and a princess, Wiley and Ozzo, literally flew here from St. Lucia. They're adorable, but we really like life here in Charlotte. And then in my spare time, I am not very good. I'm getting better, but I'm trying to overcome the fraud feeling of being a golfer and learning how to navigate golfing. But we have a really great community out here. We're normally either hosting or at someone's house watching sports, barbecuing something, and in my spare time I like making my version of moonshine limoncello. So that's me. Brooke, now that people know a little bit about us, why don't you tell us something? We're going to talk a lot about our different experiences through this podcast, but tell us something that maybe stands out about what you're doing right now, starting your business, this mompreneur. Give us something that you're proud of that maybe doesn't totally jump out on your resume.
I feel that this whole topic of fraud to fearless, while I'm right in the middle of building a business, I just have gone through a divorce this year. It has been a crazy year, and we all get hit with stuff. So I hope that I'll have some relatable stories throughout this journey for other people that are going through similar things and difficulties. The thing that is right in my face, but that I'm really proud of right now is being able to push through and start a business while being a mom first, prioritizing the things that are most important to me, despite all of the things that are going on in my life. I think we'll get more into this as the podcast goes on, but being able to get out of this victim mentality and creating something beautiful. So this year, I became a certified professional speaker. It's always been a dream of mine. I started my own business called Steward of My Life, and I'm helping people reach their goals using data. And it is just amazing to see how God has worked through that. One thing I forgot to mention in my bio is that God is such a big part of that. So you're going to hear that from me throughout the podcast and seeing his hand in my life. And I'm excited to learn so much from you, Hayden. I want to kind of flip the table and ask you kind of talked about how you've had all these different roles, so much experience, and supporting people all over the country. Tell us right now, what's kind of like your passion thing, the thing that people might not know that you're doing, but highlight what you're working on.
I think what's really exciting, Brooke, about what you were just talking about is just this idea that every day is a roller coaster. Every day you don't really know what you're going to get hit with, but you just got to navigate and move forward. And I think sometimes when it's maybe a more stressful part of my job or work and there's a lot going on, generally my response is to move. Just move and we'll figure it out. And I think that's really cool about what you just shared. And I think that's really an approach that I do too is, I've started as an intern, worked my way up to a director. I feel like, relatively quickly and have, a lot of really good experiences. But maybe the answer to your question would surprise is I really love what I do in my day job, but there's also passion projects. And one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is Brooke and I, when we were in grad school, we worked in the Career Advisement Center at Utah State, where we were working with hundreds of undergrad and grad students, giving them advice on resume, interview, like mock interviews. What job should they be going for? It was really this podcast, but it was really like, how can we help individuals build their brand and then use that brand to overcome imposter syndrome to become fearless? And one thing, in my opinion, one of my passion project of my current job working at Honeywell is for the last 3 years, I've been the campus manager for Honeywell at Utah State. So every year I lead a team of recruiters, so Utah State alumni that work in HR at Honeywell, and we go to campus and we recruit the next cohort of interns. And we give back to the university. We interact with the students. A lot of it is helping students grow and go through experiences, often for the first time. I mean, when you and I were in school, we literally start class and 2 weeks later we're interviewing with these Fortune 100 companies. I mean, talk about feeling like a fraud. Most of us didn't have HR experience and never talked to big companies before. And now all of a sudden we're back to back to back of these huge life-changing interviews where our life is literally changed with the news that we get on the phone call after this interview. So every year getting to go and select the next cohort of HR leaders, in my opinion, is one of the most important things that I do. And I think a lot of my experience, and then Brooke, our experience working in that career advisement center, I hope is we're going to be talking about on this podcast to help others that maybe don't have that level of resources or support. I think it's really important. But that's one of the things I'm most passionate about with my job. Brooke, why do this? Why are we even doing this podcast?
Why are we doing Fraud to Fearless? I think that as you step into things that are on your heart, the things that you feel called to do, there comes this feeling of, well, what if I can't do it? And don't I have to cross off X, Y, and Z to do that thing first? And even in starting this podcast, Hayden, I mean, even on this call right now, why am I sweating, And so I think number one, it's to show, look, we're going to do something at the stage that we're at right now, not knowing how to do the podcast or anything else. Well, we're going to show up, and it's about growth. When I think about fraud, or we talked about imposter syndrome, a lot of times we think of it in a certain way. And lately, I've been thinking that fraud for me is actually not living in alignment with who I really am and what I'm called to do. And so I've found myself in different places in my career, in different places in my personal life, where I was so scared to step into the things that I felt like I was called to do.
Yep.
Because I was a fraud, when really the life that I was living was the real fraud, because it wasn't who I was supposed to be. And I wasn't living in alignment with my gifts, my calling, my talents and skills. And so this is the message that I want to share from my heart, is that finding the people, if you're listening to this now and you feel like you're living this life that is not the life that you felt like you signed up to live, you can get from that place of fraud to step into something that's scary and become fearless in what you're called to do. Hayden, I have to give you credit, because when we were considering all the names to have for this podcast, this was the winner. Tell me what was going through your mind as you kind of pushed us through the finish line on, no, this is what the name needs to be.
Yeah, this is breaking news. We're literally in episode 1, and we're giving the listeners an insight into popping the hood on naming convention for the podcast, which I think is awesome. Like, what you're going to get with me and Brooke is no egos, no tricks. We're just going to move. We're going to move. We're going to try our best. We don't have a destination in mind. This is something we're passionate about. I think we're going to have a lot of fun doing it, but this is a journey. So, yeah, we had a lot of names. I cannot confirm or deny if ChatGPT was involved in any of it, but I think the biggest the biggest pushback that I think both of us, Brooke, had on the name was the word fraud, because it's harsh. Like, when we think of fraud, we think of, bad things, or, financial fraud, or doing things against the law. And so we don't necessarily love that. But I think it's fair to be critical on imposter syndrome. I think it's fair to classify doubting yourself as something that is bad. And I think fraud is a fair word. But ultimately, our journey, and like, if you look at our logo, we're literally climbing the mountain together, right? We're starting fraud and we're transitioning to fearless. And I I think fearless is just such a powerful word. And Brooke and I were both big fans of motivation. And so this is going to feel like a self-help podcast, business advice, but I think almost every episode is probably going to turn into a motivational speech. But we've got a whole bunch of special guests queued up too, so we're going to learn a lot together, and it's going to be a fun ride. I think for me, it's very easy for everyone in today's world and society to have their life just kind of hijacked. You clip into the grid, and you're in the grid and you're stuck. And then it's like, what's my mission statement as a person? What's my mission statement at work? What's my mission statement in my marriage, or as a family member, or with my friends? And in my opinion, it's so important to be reflective and to think about, why am I doing this? You know, we just get told what to do, so we do it. We just are told we need to pick a major, so we pick a. So how can we try to break that mold and say, you know what? I'm going to do some real reflection on who I think I am, what my strengths are, and what do I want to do? And then let's figure out how to do it together. Let's figure out a path to help you accomplish what you want to do, and do it now. Let's go right now. Don't be afraid. Don't let the fraud voice, whisper in your ear that you're not good enough, or no, maybe next year. Or I love I think, Brooke, this was a TED talk that we listened to in grad school, but had a big impact on me, was when we're little kids, we get asked to dance, and all the kids will dance. It's like, hey, can you dance? They say, oh yeah, and they'll start doing it for you. But now, as an adult, if we get asked to dance, it's, no, I'm not good, or I don't know how. And it's like, sure you do. Dancing is wiggling your body. Do it, you know? And that attitude is so tough. I hate it. I wish I do it sometimes, but I don't like being that way. So I think, Brooke, I love what you said about the fraud feeling is not me. That is not my brand. And that's going to be our next episode. You're going to hear, two of the experts. We're going to talk about our brand. We are going to share like who we are, our brand, and then how we implement that in our life, and give some advice to each of you. But I think this topic is not talked about enough. Being insecure, feeling like doubting yourself, feeling imposter syndrome, but it is human nature to feel it probably every day. So, how can we together give this feeling a voice and bring it to light so we can defeat it together, and ultimately all climb that peak and become fearless? In true fraud to fearless fashion, we're going to end with just a question, just a random question to each other, just so you can continue to get to know us. Brooke, I want you to, for our listeners, describe yourself in one word.
Charismatic.
That's great. Why?
Oh, geez. That's the first word that popped into my head. I've heard people say that many times about me. I am able to connect with people from the moment that I meet them. I like to genuinely get to know you, and it's not just a thing. I want to see you. I want to acknowledge you. I want to connect with you. And once I do that, then I remember you. Maybe there's a better word, but there you go. So, do you get the same question or do I have to dish you back another one?
It's up to you. You pick.
I feel like it should be the same one. Don't you? People are going to want to know.
Cool. That's fair. That's
Tell
fair.
me
All right.
one word to describe you.
I'm going to roll with resilient. Yeah, I think pretty early age, everyone goes through trials in their life, but I think when all else fails, what I can always count on is getting back up. And I think I really like, eventually I want to talk about resiliency in the workplace and how we can create a culture of innovation and creativity by not being overly critical of mistakes. And I think being resilient in a positive way helps people move forward and progress. If something bad happens, good. We can overcome it. If, there's some sort of crisis at work, good. Let's learn from it and get better. Just this idea of instead of like, oh no, and just letting you want your friendship or like your work performance to be expensive. You want something big to make you be a worse friend. You want, you want that to be, like you've got to earn me feeling down. And so I think this resiliency of I'm going to get back up no matter what, it's going to take a lot to knock me down, I think is really important. And I think it's really helpful in a business setting. So being able to overcome adversity and commit to this creative, innovative culture, I think is super important. All right, everybody, that's episode 1 of many. The journey begins. Thanks for joining us. Go Aggies, and enjoy the rest of your day. But for now, it's the pod.